One of them says 1:30. I have something to read before we call the roll. Just want to remind the committee members and members of the public to follow our code of conduct at meetings. This includes commenting on the specific agenda item only and addressing the full body. Public speakers will not engage in conversations with the chair or specific council members or staff. All members of the committee, staff, and the public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Failure to comply with this code of conduct that will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of this meeting will result in removal from this meeting. All right, now we will have the Transportation and Environment Committee come to order. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Esparza?
Here.
Perales? Foley?
Here.
Cohen?
Here.
Davis?
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Now we will move on to the review of the work plan. There are 2 items on the work plan review. One is recommended to be dropped and the other is to be deferred to June. I see that there is one member of the public with their hand up. So we'll take public comment on this item before I ask for a vote. And I also want to note that Councilmember Perales has arrived. Blair?
Hi. Blair Beekman here. Happy May to everyone. I wanted to bring up, you have a tow truck item that is part of the consent calendar here. I just wanted to remind that it's nice. It's a nice reminder that the people who make the committee agenda items each week, they do a pretty interesting job of items to place on the agendas. And this is one of them to me. I think it nicely asks the question that we're going to have to be dealing with the Columbus Park area sometime soon. And a friendly reminder that if there can be ways to help people out in that area with tow truck needs, possibly for free or very low cost and for free, that can be of much help. And just a reminder of that process, and hopefully it can go well. And thanks a lot for this agenda item being here today.
All right, thank you. There are no other members of the public with their hand raised. I would like a motion.
Move to make the change for the second item to June.
I'll second.
Thank you. Councilmember Esparza, it cut out for a second. Did you do the first and the second item or just the second item?
As I make the changes, sorry, I'm having hotspot issues. So move to make the changes and defer the second item to June was the motion.
Okay. Did you want to comment on the first item?
No.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion on the floor to defer the second item.
Do we need to include dropping the first item?
I believe so, yes.
So if I need to be more explicit, I'll say to drop the first item and move the second item to June. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just going to ask for clarification on that. Thanks. Is that okay with the seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Great. Thank you. Can we have the roll, please?
Esparza?
Yes.
Perales?
Yes.
Foley?
Aye.
Cohen?
Aye.
Davis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion passes. And we will move on to the consent calendar. There is one item on the consent calendar, the CEQA Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program Semi-Annual Status Report. I don't see any hands raised from the public. Oh, there's one. All right. I just want to make sure does the clerk want to call the person since you have the timer?
I can call. Blair Beekman?
Hi. Blair Beekman here. Sorry if I mixed up consent and items to be deferred, the work plan. I also wanted to ask if I'm assuming that this is about item number 3. Is it related to item number 3? Because if it is, I can just make a quick statement that good luck in your efforts to better talk about CEQA and what I think is a real need that as city government is developing some really interesting ways, can be interesting to develop the future of CEQA that don't forget to want to involve everyday corporate entities and private entities in this process. Don't be what's the word, overly government macho about it, I guess is how to say it. You don't have all the answers. We're learning new things now. Just a reminder to be open to what private entities can offer, what really needs to be the future of environmental concerns, and how do we review our environmental concerns 6 months into a project or after the project is done. I think to have a review process that really reviews, the environmental impacts exactly. That's the process of how we grow, and it invites all parts of the community to a learning process, and it can be a shared process. Good luck in what we're all trying to learn at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for a motion on the consent calendar. Oh, there's another hand that went up. Oh, it's Blair again. Okay.
Again.
Got it.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Can we have the roll, please?
Esparza,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Foley,
Aye.
Aye.
Davis.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to item D1, reports to committee. And this first one is the discharge regulations and future impacts on the regional wastewater facility capital projects. Jennifer?
Thank you, Council Member.
Oh,
This is Amit Mitsudi, Deputy Director, Wastewater Management, Regional Wastewater Facility. With me, I have today Jennifer Pinocola-Brown, who is the Division Manager for Compliance. And then I have Jason Nettleton, who is the Principal Engineer for Air Compliance, and Eric Dunleavy, which is for Water Compliance. So staff will be taking, staff has a brief presentation for you, with Jennifer taking the lead. With that, I hand over to Jennifer.
Just getting my presentation to load. Oh, screen sharing is not working. Sorry about this. It's not loading. I just had it work.
Council members, bear with us. We're seem to have some technical difficulty. We'll be there in a second.
There we go.
There it is.
Thank you for your patience. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Davis and members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Vicola-Brown, the Sustainability and Compliance Division Manager for ESD. This is our annual update to the committee to inform about regulatory activities and changes that may affect the regional wastewater facility. We'll also share activities that we engage in to meet compliance and to prepare for regulations, which in the end results in enhanced benefits to the environment and habitats through our stewardship. I'm joined by Jason Nettleton, our Principal Engineer over Air Compliance, and Eric Dunleavy, Environmental Services Program Manager over Wastewater Compliance at the RWF. Right here, you see an image of the regional wastewater facilities service area. You've seen this before. It's the largest advanced facility in the West. It covers about half of Santa Clara County, where it provides service nonstop. It's subject to many regulations and holds multiple permits. To ensure compliance and to be proactive, we remain vigilant and actively engaged in regional coalitions to track any upcoming legislation or regulations that could impact operations. And this is all an aim of getting ahead of what we may be facing, because it allows us to prepare with science-based evaluations used to better understand the impacts and advocate on the tributary agencies, our customers, and our behalf for sensible regulations. We also take pending regulations into consideration as projects are designed as part of the capital improvement program or regular operations and maintenance at the RWF. We strive to maintain productive and positive relationships with our regulators and seek to build more collaboration where needed to address any caps. Next, we'll discuss permits and other regulatory activity, and we're going to start with the air quality program. Jason?
Thank you. So the air pollution emissions are regulated by the Air Quality Management District, or just Air District, under the federal Title V operating permit and the local permit to operate. The facility has a Title V or major source permit primarily due to emissions from our on-site cogeneration facility that provides power for wastewater treatment operations. The Title V renewal that will bring the permit up to date is expected this month. Through the process, no public comments were received during renewal, which means we have happy neighbors. Next slide, please. All right. So the Air District is in the process of developing and implementing rules aimed at addressing both climate change and environmental justice concerns, including the 3 listed here that will affect the wastewater facility. Environmental justice regulations focus on the emissions of toxic air contaminants. Regulation 2.5 was adopted in 2021 with the intent of reducing emissions in communities that are currently disproportionately affected by air pollution. Regulation 11.18 is a similar focus and is in just the early stages of development. Regulation 13.4 for greenhouse gases has been scheduled for development for more than 2 years, but the process has been on hold due to lack of resources at the Air District. Next slide, please. The Air District has ambitions to address large issues of climate change and environmental justice, but has encountered difficulties and delays in part due to insufficient resources. So these resource constraints have caused delays in some of their other actions, most notably reviews of source tests and permit applications. So these delays have the potential to affect facility capital projects. So the city staff have been increasing outreach efforts to the Air District to reduce the delays and mitigate any of their effects. So during the adoption of Rule 2.5, the Air District Board of Directors approved a resolution to create a working group comprised of Air District management and members of the Bay Area Clean Water Agencies, or BACWA, which includes San Jose staff. This work group was formed in response to concerns raised by BACWA on potential adverse effects of the rule on the wastewater industry. So this work group will meet quarterly to discuss air quality issues affecting the wastewater treatment industry and will report progress to the Air District Board of Directors on a semi-annual basis. Now, in parallel with the BACWA outreach efforts, city staff are working with Air District engineering staff on permitting and source testing issues. These outreach efforts are intended to help regulatory staff understand the wastewater treatment process with the goal of decreasing permit processing times, streamlining permit conditions, and reducing the potential for enforcement actions. Next slide will be Eric with wastewater.
Thanks, Jason. Switching over to the wastewater compliance side of things, there are 3 main wastewater permits. There's our individual permit, which was reissued in 2020, and the most significant outcome of our negotiations for that reissuance was a change to the test species used for the required toxicity testing of our effluent. Our new test species is much less prone to false positive test results compared to the previous one, and a change to statewide regulations that is pending final approval will impose regulatory penalties for positive toxicity test results. These are penalties that don't currently exist. So the change to our test species will reduce our exposure to future regulatory penalties from erroneous test results. And our nutrient permit, which is a group permit that applies to all wastewater treatment plants discharging to San Francisco Bay, addresses nitrogen and phosphorus. These are 2 elements that occur in all wastewater, and they're essential to a healthy bay, but they can have detrimental effects if they occur at high enough levels under the right conditions. And I'll provide more detail about our nutrient regulations later in this presentation. And then our PCBs and mercury permit, also a group permit, is set to be reissued at the end of this year, and that establishes effluent limits for these legacy pollutants. It requires monitoring, an ongoing source control program, and programs to reduce risk exposure to vulnerable populations. Next slide, please. So our nutrient permit requires financial support for a regional science program to evaluate the impact of nutrients on the environmental health of San Francisco Bay. And we've been actively engaged in leadership positions in this science program for the past 10 years since it started. It's a highly collaborative process with scientists, regulators, dischargers, and environmental groups studying the nutrient issues in the Bay. And it's been granted some national awards for collaboration and been held up as a model example for a collaborative science-based process for regulatory development. To date, our studies of the Bay have not identified clear ecological impairment, and this is despite very elevated levels of nutrients in Bay waters. So the conditions aren't right to cause an impairment, but the nutrients are there. As a wastewater treatment facility, we are already very effective at removing nutrients from wastewater due to past upgrades. And wastewater compliance staff have also proactively undertaken scientific investigations of the environmental condition in the lower South Bay as shown in these pictures. The permit also requires a regional evaluation of the opportunities and costs to reduce nutrient loads to the Bay through other means, such as expanded recycled water and through utilizing nature-based solutions that beneficially reuse wastewater. These evaluations of costs and opportunity will add useful information to our existing understanding of the costs of engineered treatment technologies that have traditionally been used to reduce nutrients in wastewater. And reissuance of the nutrient permit in 2024 is in the early stages of negotiation. The next permit will include a nitrogen load cap that considers short-term population growth. And we've already proactively adjusted operations to optimize our existing nitrogen removal. And our current removal rates are at an all-time high from a percent removal perspective. The capital improvement program also has projects underway or scheduled that will reduce nutrients in our discharge by improving the reliability of our existing treatment process. And to ensure we can meet the load cap long-term, we've completed a study in 2021 that evaluated the upgrades necessary to meet this load cap well into the future. That upgrade technology has been identified and the timing and implementation are currently being determined. Next slide, please. So contaminants of emerging concern, or CECs. There are an enormous number of CECs with over 80,000 compounds identified as CECs. The number of these compounds occurring at elevated levels of concern in the Bay are also growing each year. So there's been a rapid increase in the amount of work concerning CECs in the past few years. Presently, there are no regulatory limits for CECs, but by their nature, these are contaminants that should be evaluated carefully in wastewater and in the Bay in order to determine if pollutant reduction strategies or regulations are necessary. Through our pollution prevention program, we take a proactive approach to CECs by assessing environmental risk and then taking action to reduce risk through outreach, education, and legislative advocacy so that future regulations don't result in even more expensive programs or treatment systems in order to fix a problem that could have been avoided. And so how do we do this? Wastewater compliance staff accomplish this through a collaborative science-based process through the San Francisco Bay Regional Monitoring Program's Emerging Contaminants Work Group. That's quite a mouthful. The work group is comprised of nationally recognized scientific advisors, regulators, and stakeholders. And it's here that knowledge and evaluation of product use patterns of CECs help develop monitoring and assessment strategies that then inform pollution prevention messaging. Our outreach messaging about flea and tick treatments for pets and safe medicine disposal are great examples of how this collaborative science-based process has informed and prioritized effective public outreach messaging campaigns. And this proactive approach has served us well in addressing CEC's issues early and avoiding costly regulations, but it's no guarantee that future CEC regulations will be avoided, and in some cases, they may be inevitable. And that's the likely case for PFAS, which is a current CEC that has increased national attention, and you may have heard of it. These are forever chemicals used in a broad range of products from food packaging to firefighting foams and even personal care products. We've proactively partnered with our regional regulators, scientists, and wastewater colleagues to conduct a Bay-wide study evaluating levels of PFAS entering and leaving wastewater treatment plants to look at the fate and transport in influent, effluent, and in biosolids. We're also investigating the most significant sources of PFAS discharged into the wastewater collection system from residential, industrial, and commercial sectors. And this is a very unique study that has the support of our state regulators and EPA. The study is underway and will be critical in determining which actions will most effectively reduce PFAS levels in wastewater, and it'll enable us to effectively respond to any future wastewater regulations for PFAS. Next slide. So shifting gears, just to quickly mention our biosolids processing. The biosolids generated at the facility must be disposed of or beneficially reused, and currently our biosolids are applied as alternate daily cover to cover landfill waste at Newbie Island Landfill. The SB 1383 legislation, which was passed in 2016, targets reductions in short-lived climate pollutants by limiting the amount of organics that can be sent to landfills. And this legislation introduced some uncertainty for our solids disposal because biosolids are included within the legislation's definition of organics. So what does that mean for us? Well, construction and commissioning of a new digested sludge dewatering facility, which is anticipated to be completed in 2025, coupled with implementation of an approved biosolids transition strategy, will align our future biosolids disposal operations with the intent of the SB 1383 regulations. The transition strategy will shift from landfill disposal of the current solar-dried biosolids to a diverse set of beneficial reuse disposal options like fertilizer production and use of biosolids in natural and working lands. And with that, I will turn it back over to Jennifer for a wrap up.
Thanks, Eric. So we've thus far been successful at employing strategies with our efforts to engage often and early for development of regulations and working closely with the city's intergovernmental relations team and our regional partners to identify, track, and evaluate any of these new and potential legislation bills that come up. We'll be continuing to engage with our regulators to maintain effective working relationships as we all have the common goals to protect the community and the environment. This has been very fruitful in our relationship with the Water Board. We're hoping that this new, more focused collaboration with the RWF staff, our regional partners, and BACMed, as Jason described, will be able to address our concerns with the process of implementing air quality regulation. We're very hopeful that it will yield positive results. With that, it is important to also note that Santa Clara County is currently inadequately represented on the BACMed board. There are 3 vacant board member positions for elected officials from this county. And lastly, the flexibility that we've built into our capital program will continue, and it'll allow us to respond to new regulations as they're adopted. With that, we're available for any questions you might have.
Thank you.
We'll go to the public first.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thanks for your patience with myself on the previous items. For this item, I guess first, it's of interest that there's not enough South Bay representation on BACMed. Good luck in those efforts. About the future of air quality monitoring systems, just a hopeful reminder that there's going to be a surveillance and technology involved with the air monitoring systems, and that it is it can be good practice. The fire truck is going by. It can be good practice that to practice how open public policies and accountability with air monitoring technology, and how that can be an open process with the public, how its data collection can be shared with the public, and what exactly it will be doing. That can be good work for yourselves. I also wanted to remind from that with the water treatment plant itself, another reminder that it's okay, I think, to talk about the ideas of sea level rise. I know it's a fearful subject and it's not that pleasing, but it is happening, and to be noting that to our community as you're building things at this time, I think it could be really helpful to ourselves. We don't have to do it in alarmist terms, but just so that we can, become aware that we do have to build things now to mitigate sea level rise issues. It can send a subtle, a simple, and a real important message to ourselves that we've got to be working on stuff. So good luck in these efforts, and because we do have to be working on sea level rise issues for the future of this part of the bay, and good luck in our efforts how we can do that. Thank you.
Back to committee. Thank you. Turning back to my colleagues, are there any comments or questions? All right. I have one about the Bachman vacancies in the for the county. Did I hear that correctly? It's 3 vacancies for the county.
That is correct. Councilmember.
How do these vacancies get filled? Are these appointed positions? Are all of the San Jose specific ones filled, or how does that work?
Santa Clara County gets full representation at the Bachman board. It's a 27-member board. Currently, there are like 3 vacancies. So our understanding is we have to apply for representation through county of Santa Clara. They will select the person. They are not elected, but they are rather elected members and selected by the county. We're going to find more information for you and forward to your office.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Cohen.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question to summarize that great presentation about all the different effluents we have to be concerned about. Given the changing regulation, I just wanted to confirm with you. We think we have the capability to continue to monitor and handle those, or is there some eventual costs that we will have to incur as a result of changing levels of different contaminants?
So I will take try to attempt to respond to the question. As you heard, there are a number of constituents in the wastewater, and we don't control what comes in. But it takes decades to figure out what is the dose versus impact relationship, and what should be the level of concern, and what's the environmental impact associated with it. Right now, there are 80,000 compounds in there, and some of them gets elevated to higher level of concern, like PFAS is getting a lot of attention at this time, and we are actively engaging with the other regulatory agencies as well as other wastewater treatment plant on monitoring them and monitoring how much we can see in the wastewater that is coming in, how much is transformed, and how much is ending up in our final effluent and as well as biosolids. There's also research undergoing right now independently and by the scholarly organization about fate and transportation of PFAS into the environment, as well as we're also doing through our collaboration effort with the BABC, Bay Area Biosolid Coalition, to look at the plant uptake of biosolids, PFAS compounds through biosolids. So there is just about to release another paper on impact of biosolids on baylands. If you're interested to hear about it, we can share it with you. With that, Eric, do you want to add anything else?
I would only add that, with respect to nutrients and the future nitrogen load cap, that will eventually require us to take some sort of treatment upgrade action, and that is an additional expense. And so, nitrogen, it comes from people. And so as we get more people in the service area, we're going to receive more nitrogen. And if our effluent load going into the bay is capped, then we have to do something to further reduce that nitrogen that's coming to us. So that is another expense in action.
Open or close, buddy? Great, thank you. And I know you have a very great capability in the lab at the treatment facility, presumably to monitor all these various, 80,000 potential things to monitor. There are always there could be additional costs as well to upgrade equipment or make sure you have the staff to do it, right? Okay. All right, thank you. I'll move that we accept the report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other colleagues have questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the roll.
Sparza,
Yes.
Corrales,
Yes.
Foley,
Aye.
Cohen.
Aye.
Davis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item D2, Coyote Valley status report. Michael?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are listed as Chris Burton. That's why I was confused.
Oh, okay. Huh, I wonder who did that. There, that's better.
Thanks.
Okay. Let me get my presentation. Okay, you should be able to see that. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So I'm here today so stepping back for a moment. In the 4-year review process in December, when we brought the Coyote Valley items, came at the end of November, council recommended or asked that we come back to T&E with a report on all things Coyote. So there's a lot of different things afoot going on in Coyote Valley. And just kind of talk about where they're at and how they're coordinating and how they're thinking about the future of the Coyote Valley. Today, we're not going to dig deep into those for reasons I think that probably were clear in the memo and we'll talk about here, but it's just sort of to give you a highlight, just to remind you of what those 4 things are. And just to sort of talk about the budget issues and the budget considerations related to working on these 4 items. So the first item is being led by the Environmental Service Divisions, and this is the Natural and Working Lands Program, or Development of a Natural and Working Lands Element. We call it NWL for short. It's a partnership between the city and the Santa Clara Open Space Authority. And it's going to identify how the natural and working lands could contribute to climate smart GHG reduction goals. It's not just Coyote. A big part of its recommendations do have to do with Coyote, but it's also looking at other natural working lands within the city limits, also within the sphere of influence just outside of the city limits. The draft of the NW element is completed. It will go to council for consideration to be integrated in Climate Smart San Jose. Council date is still TBD, but it will be coming to council. I think ESD Julie may be here if there's some more questions on this. And let me go to the next slide. So the other process is the Coyote Valley Master Plan planning process. This is being led by the Open Space Authority in collaboration with the Peninsula Open Space Trust, which we call POST, and the city. On the city side, this process has been currently led by the mayor's office. And what this plan will do is essentially be planning for the land that has been publicly purchased in Coyote Valley, coming up with an overall plan on how to accommodate wildlife landscape linkages, how to manage the water resources, how to better improve public access to this land in an equitable way, so all people from all backgrounds who may not live immediately next to it will have access and be ability to get out there and experience it. Also exploring how it could be preserved for agriculture. The master planning process will identify some early implementation projects to restore and enhance these properties. And it's anticipated to be a 3 to 5 year integrated planning process. Right now, they're in the early stages of that process. The other one, which we talked about through the approval of the Coyote framework in the fall, was the Coyote Credits Program. This effort is being led by a consultant team, notably Terry Watt, who I believe is on this call, who is working for POST. And the idea here is that natural and working lands in Coyote have a GHG sequestration benefit in terms of like sucking GHG out of the atmosphere, and that benefit could be enhanced through preservation and restoration of the land in Coyote Valley. The idea here is that, is sort of come up with a value of that sequestration of that land, and then establish credits so that developers that have a need for environmental mitigation through the CEQA process, or corporate entities that have sustainability goals or net carbon footprint goals, could purchase these credits. And then the money generated by these credits would be used to restore and potentially restore land in Coyote Valley, property in Coyote Valley, potentially buy more property, and also buy scenic or non-development easements in Coyote as well from property owners that want to retain their land. And this program is still really under development. It could be managed by a third party, by an open space. So that's, for example, the Open Space Authority. It also could be managed by the city, but that's to be determined. The other one is the Monterey Coyote Corridor study. We've added the word coyote because as Councilmember Esparza will note, there is another Monterey Corridor work going on, and we don't want to confuse the two. So this is the Monterey Coyote Corridor study. This also came out of the 4-year review of the general plan as a result of the decisions that the council made on Coyote Valley. We came to you back in March, I think it was March 3rd or March 5th, to discuss a budget that would be needed to do this work. So council direction was to conduct a study to identify non-residential uses that would be appropriate for the east side of Monterey Highway. These uses should be compatible with Coyote Creek and the broader environmental objectives that the general plan has in Coyote Valley. And funding is currently included in the administration's proposed budget. If funding is approved, work would begin in the summer of 2022. And we anticipate this work would take approximately 1.5 years to finish. So staff resources. So currently there are no staffing resources to work on climate credits, Coyote Valley Master Plan, and the Coyote Corridor items. The NWL, Natural Working Lands, is covered by ESD staff, so that work is taken care of, but the other 3 items don't currently have resources to participate in these processes. There's also no department to lead coordinating these 4 items. But however, staff resources will be considered as part of the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget process. And I understand, in the mayor's budget message, for example, there was included a resilience planning, a resilience plan officer that would oversee sort of coordination on much of this work. That concludes staff recommendation. Kip, I don't know if you had anything more you wanted to add on the budget side.
Yes, I did, Mike. Thank you. Kip Harkness, Deputy City Manager. Just 3 quick things to add to what Mike said. One, obviously, this is very important work for both the environment and people, with a rather ambitious work plan with many different components. Second, as was clear from Mike's presentation, it's also pretty complicated work with many departments being involved: planning, building, code enforcement, environmental services, economic development, public works, park recreation, neighborhood services. And then the mayor's office has had considerable amount of leadership in coordinating all of this, as well as there are a number of very important partners at play. So what we have, kind of the good news, bad news on this is we really haven't been able to focus on moving this forward in a collective way that it deserves, because we have lacked both kind of the staff resources, some of the consultant resources, and then clear governance on our side, on the administration side, on how we're going to prioritize this as part of the overall kind of roadmap effort. The direction that you gave us as part of the March budget message, I think, goes a long way to clarifying that. There's funding that would be involved for a couple of components of this, and it also has directed us to clarify and simplify the governance. So our sense is that should that budget language make it all the way through to the final and be supported by you all, that we'll be able to make a lot more momentum on this work in the next fiscal year. And unless and until that happens, however, we're kind of going on a catch as catch can basis with the resources that we have available and disposable to us, with some of the efforts moving ahead and others of them, frankly, more on a bit of a pause situation, not because they're not important, but because we don't have the full team together and coherent. So our hope is the direction you've given us both clarifies that and will give us enough of the resources that we need to make a significant lift in the next fiscal year. And it will be part of the roadmap priorities going forward, will be at least staff's recommendation for you to decide. So with that, I'll stop. And as Michael indicated, we're free to take any questions or feedback that you might have for us.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the overview and the focus of the presentation. Thank you very much. We're going to go to members of the public first.
Brian Schmidt.
Good afternoon, Brian Schmidt with Green Foothills, and I want to start just by once again thanking staff and the council for such excellent work that has been done on Coyote Valley, and what an amazing amount of change has happened in the last few years. And overall in the status report, we can see that they're not resting on their laurels. Things are happening. In particular, 3 of the 4 items, the natural working lands, the master plan, and the climate credits, are all moving forward. And we're glad to see those move forward. Those are the ones that are particularly urgent. Regarding the Monterey Corridor, it might actually benefit from the fact that the master plan might precede it in some of the work. There is not the same sense of urgency in working on that. That plan does need to be done. The corridor study does need to be done. It is not extremely urgent. And one thing that can be done to make it simpler is to keep the eyes on the prize. And in that case, it is to focus the uses and conformance of uses in county and city jurisdictional lands along Monterey Corridor. It is not a massive research for massive opportunities and alternatives for development, which are not needed in Coyote Valley. That ship has sailed a while back. One of the slides talked about the importance of Coyote Valley as a wildlife landscape linkage area. The weak link in Coyote Valley is Monterey Corridor for wildlife. So massive development there could be a real problem. We hope the study reflects that and is protective of wildlife movement. Thank you very much.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for this item. Hopefully, just a couple of quick reminders I can offer you. Again, all my work with surveillance and technology ordinance stuff, open public policies and accountability. You were talking about wildlife practices that are going to be needed, and there's going to be surveillance and data collection that's going to be needed for this project. Again, to practice open public policies and accountability with the technology and data collection that's going to be used for this project, for this area.
Blair, we lost you. Are you still there?
We can do that. And there's one other, the city of Davis, I always like to say, you know, they have really, really good examples of wildlife surveillance technology, open public policy ideas that I know you guys know about, that possibly, you know, Kip had mentioned they're looking for some sort of spark, some sort of interest, how to better understand how to work the future of Coyote Valley projects. Maybe a trip up to Davis. I know city government staff does take those trips occasionally. Another trip up to Davis to check out what they do with surveillance and technology ordinance things and open public policies with tech can be a bit of an inspiration for yourselves at this time. Thanks a lot.
Jill Borders.
Hi, I'm here. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to see it listed that we need more resources to put together a Coyote Valley plan. I wanted to highlight a couple things that I heard in the report that are of great interest to me. Coming June 8th to the Planning Commission will be a project that's been kind of lingering and going on since 2017, where one gentleman wants to build a mansion on 2 parcels that are just north of Coyote Valley. So Bailey, kind of, if you think of your mind down there, Santa Teresa, and kind of the end of or the north of Coyote Valley. Anyway, my point is this, is that those 2 parcels were purchased by this individual, and he's worked to try with the planning department, and there is now a negative mitigated declaration. And the public's concern here is that we are taxed for, putting money into open space preservation, and yet we get these people who can just buy these parcels out from under us before we get the opportunity. And then they can submit and hold up for years and years and years in our planning departments, submitting to build a giant mansion in near these preserves. And what I'd really love to see is that people focus on the details. So when you're looking to vote in these things, I'm not trying to deny one man his residence. I'm trying to think of the thousands and thousands of animals who use that one particular linkage right there, that animal crossing. That's I think it's the only animal crossing, east-west crossing right there. And so as we become more as experts in this field of preservation and wildlife, I hope you'll look at the details on this one. It's just incredibly critical that that east-west wildlife corridor is preserved from this particular development. Thank you.
Back to committee.
Thank you. Do any of my colleagues have questions or comments? Quiet bunch today. While you're thinking, I have a few. Regarding both the natural, well, really all of the programs that you talked about, Michael, what is the outreach on those? And I understand that there's been some, I don't want to say conflict, but I would say tension between the environmental groups that are leading some of these items and the property owners. And I want to know what the outreach and the inclusion has been with the property owners in the corridor for each of these slices of work.
Right. So I'll start with the easy one, Monterey Corridor. So we haven't started that outreach yet. So
Right.
That will happen. I mean, we've talked to folks, but it hasn't happened yet. And then and natural working lands, I would have to defer to ESD staff on that one. I know they have done outreach, but I haven't been deep in that. So they would need to respond to that. The Coyote Valley master planning process, they're really in the early stages of sort of crafting what outreach would look like. So they haven't really started that yet. And climate credits hasn't gone public yet, to be honest with you. It's still in sort of the mechanical stage of how would this work mechanically. And there hasn't been outreach done yet to that. I mean, I think the council was hoping to have a conversation with that consultant team about what that's looking like. There was an attempt to bring them to this meeting. It was decided to be better to bring them back at a later date. So, I think that outreach for that really, I have to let them speak on that because they're leading that work. We're not, but my understanding is that, we're not at a point yet to actually do outreach on that either.
Okay, so thank you. I did see, I think Terrell Watt is, or Terrell Watt.
Yeah, that's the consultant. You can.
He's there in the attendees. Can somebody bring him over?
It's a her.
Her, sorry. Carol, are you there? There you are. I knew a Terrell in high school. Spelled differently.
No worries, the council member. So happy to be joining you today. Would you like me to take on the question of outreach?
Yes, please.
Great. Well, I think as usual, Michael Brio got it right. The credits program is in what I'd call an explorative stage at this point. In a couple of months, we'll have an internal facing, meaning to be shared with staff, work product that will have some additional clarity around what we're calling a climate resilience credits program that would actually be voluntary and build on the market around environmental, social, and governance goals of corporations. We think there's a lot of potential here. It's extremely innovative. Of course, San Jose leading the charge. And the idea would be that we do joint thoughtful outreach, probably in concert with CV Camp. However, when we meet with your staff in a couple of months, we'd also like to discuss what other kinds of outreach would be important to you. Absolutely inclusive. Obviously, this program is to the benefit of landowners and potentially developers and corporations. So there's important outreach to be done ahead.
Great. Thank you so much. And is someone here from ESD who can speak about the Natural and Working Lands Program outreach? Michael, do you know who, or Kip?
No, I'm sorry. I did not have them prepared for that question.
Okay.
But let me see if I can get somebody to grab on. If you can continue on, and I can get
Sure.
again.
No problem. The other question I have, and Michael, I don't know if you want to take a shot at this one. I, as you know, I've been talking a lot with county folks, and they're doing some work as well in Coyote Valley, and I'm wondering what I know that you said there's no one department coordinating all of our efforts, and I didn't hear you mention any kind of outreach to the county with any of these efforts either. What's happening in our coordination with the county on either the Monterey Corridor study or the master plan or any of these items?
Yeah, so we actually are coordinating with them. So we've had a standing monthly coordination meeting with the county on all things Coyote. It was more focused on the 4-year review, right? All the stuff they were doing related to the 4-year review. But we've kept those meetings going even after the council approved the changes to Coyote Valley in December or November. So we still meet on a monthly basis.
Okay, and that's, who do you meet with at the county? What level is that happening at?
Michael Meehan, I think he believes is a senior planner. So he's the one leading all the sort of, what is it? The climate overlay thing and all that, and modifying the zoning, the county zoning and ag. So we've been coordinating with them, and we are going to continue coordinating with them. We actually also had a larger team meeting that Post set up where I'm sorry, not Post, it was Open Space Authority, but Open Space Authority, Post, us, the county, met to talk about all of these things that we're doing, and we're going to continue those meetings on a quarterly basis. So there are coordination meetings that are happening. So I don't want to say that they're not happening. They actually are happening. It's just that the challenge we have is actually have bodies to actually do the work on our side. So, and I think, we're ready to plow forward with the Monterey Coyote work to get funding for that. We have Brent, who's super excited, and he's ready to just jump out of the gate and get running once that starts. But we've already been talking to the county on that. One piece I didn't mention is that the council gave us direction to work to align our agricultural zoning districts with the county zoning district. So that's something else that's going to be happening that Brent will be leading in tandem in coordination with all this other work we're talking about.
Okay, and Brent will be leading the Monterey Coyote Corridor study?
That's correct.
Okay.
And Carrie Romanow, our Director of Environmental Services, has joined us as an attendee. If we could get her promoted as a panelist, she can answer the question on the working lands piece. And since I've sort of teleported her in her Star Trek style, council member.
Want me to repeat the question?
You could repeat the question. I think we
great.
could.
Thank you.
That would be great.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you for beaming in. The question was for the Natural and Working Lands program that ESD is heading up for Coyote Valley. What has been or what is the outreach plan for that program and that work, especially with the property owners and the site in the area, because there's been some tension with the environmental groups, and I know OSA is partnering with you on that, and that's why I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the natural marking lands, as you may recall, was something the city committed to partner with OSA and others on as part of adopting Climate Smart San Jose. Obviously, because of COVID, it took a little bit longer than we might have imagined, but the intent was to, much like Climate Smart, craft a framework, but it's not really something that has an implementation plan or an action plan associated with it. So it's sort of a collection of data and ideas more than now that this is done, we go forward and complete certain actions. So how we would move forward is still up for discussion. There is no funding or resources to do more than what we've done today. So it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't meant to be something that that continued forward. But having said that, much like Climate Smart, and as we look to update or refresh Climate Smart, we do need to fold in how do we make the best use of those lands? So how do we sequester carbon? How do we ensure we're developing where we need to develop so we lower commute pathways and get people out of their cars, et cetera. But the plan doesn't include any changes in land designation or anything like that. So much like Climate Smart, it's built on top of the general plan.
So is that all to say there wasn't any outreach with the property owners?
Well, probably the most concise answer is probably yes. Like Climate Smart, we did an outreach to specific landowners, but we did engage with our partners, a lot of groups with interest in the area, but because it's not changing anything, I don't think we did anything more than general public meetings.
Okay.
Since I'm late to this conversation, is there a specific concern from landowners?
No, I just, as we were getting the presentation, it is clear that Post and OSA are well represented throughout the entire part of the process in all of these. And I would just like to point out they're not the only stakeholders in the area. And so we know that the property owners have been there, frankly, much longer than Post and OSA. And I think it's important for their voices to be heard throughout the process and not just to check the box at the end. And they've been very clear to me, and I know to other council members on a regular basis, that they want to be included in the discussions as things go along, because they do own property in that area. They don't want things to be done to them. They want to be part of the process. And so I thought it was important to bring that up, not just for honestly, Carrie, I'm not putting you on the spot. This is for everyone, for all of these items. I think there were 4 of them. It's just important that it's not a community check the box community meeting process. It's an as they go along. If we have Post and OSA at the table at regular meetings and you're developing a framework with Post and OSA, then you should have property owners being represented at the table at the same exact time.
Okay, thank you.
Really important to do that.
I didn't feel singled out. Thank you. Really helpful.
Good. Thank you. And so I did want to ask, there was a letter from Hopkins and Carly about this item, and it was basically addressing the problem that Michael was talking about in terms of lack of funds. There is there might be funding available from cap and trade funds or the governor's proposed budget to be able to do some of this work, or also to potentially even have funding to conserve the land. So like we had the $50 million that we had on Measure T, that we might be able to get some state funding for purchasing additional parts of Coyote Valley. So I would like to ask whoever, if anyone can comment on that, but I'd also like to ask for the maker of the motion to include a direction for staff to explore with OSA and our lobbyists in Sacramento about talking to our delegation about the potential for allowing cap and trade funds, either to be used by the Habitat Conservancy Conservation Agency or open space to acquire land or development rights, and also to contact the governor's office about the potential for state and federal funding to conserve land. So I'm hoping that whoever makes the motion to accept the report will also include that staff direction. And Kip, I saw you wanted to address that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty quick. The good news is that direction is very much in alignment with the way that we're working. In fact, if I could move my video camera over, you'd see the rest of my whiteboard. I have new funding and as part of the overall resilience work and the coordination with Sarah Zarate, Zane, Tom Westfield in our IGR office. They're literally dotted line into this work that we're doing on climate resilience in a much stronger way than they have been in the past. So we'd accept that direction very willingly and happily, and it's in alignment with the work that we've started. My only minor edit as an old deputy city manager type is I think the direction should properly be to the city manager to do that, so that we can figure out what pieces and parts are the right one, rather than any particular staff or staff in general. But other than that, it's completely in alignment, and we're hopeful that there will be some significant funding sources, both for some of the potential work here and also support the ongoing effort. Part of what we've done in our city budget, though, is we've sort of primed the pump. And we've put in some funding that will allow us hopefully to do some of the studies, bring on board potentially somebody in the city manager's office who could play a coordinating role, as well as a bit of an expert role with all of the different pieces. And to your point about making sure that the different stakeholders from environmental advocates and landowners all have a sense of how the different pieces are moving together. It's complicated, and it's complicated for those that are involved on a more regular basis. So we want to make that a little more transparent, and I think that feedback was also well received. So I kind of colored outside the lines in the direct answer to the question, but a strong yes on both, I think, is our answer.
Okay, great. I don't see any of my colleagues with hands raised. Are there any other questions or comments from my colleagues on this item?
No, but I'll make a motion to accept the report and include the recommendations that you made, Chair.
Thank you. And does that include not just the recommendations for looking for funding and lobbying through the CMO's office, but also, or the city manager's office, but also additional true stakeholder engagement on all these items?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All right. I thought I saw a hand go up and then back down, but was that you, Kip?
Yeah, I just realized the letter, I don't think has made it properly into the public record. So if the clerk's office can help us get that letter into the public record, that would be appreciated.
Great. And clerk, let my office know if you didn't receive it. We'll make sure you get it. All right, I think we're ready for the vote.
Esparza? Esparza? Perales?
Yes.
Foley?
Aye.
Cohen?
Aye.
Davis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to our final item, D3, update to City Council Policy 5-1. That is our VMT policy. John, are you kicking us off?
Yeah, I'm just going to kick it off. Councilmember, thank you very much. We're here to present suggested updates to our travel policy 5-1 that was originally adopted in February 2018. So we've learned a lot over the last couple of years. We've got some suggested and recommended changes to that. We've got a presentation for you. Ramses Madhu and Nick Fry, my staff, will be doing that. And we also have received the memorandum from Councilman Prowse we can also talk about. So Ramses or Nick, do you want to pull up the presentation?
Good afternoon, committee. Ramses Madhu, Division Manager of Planning Policy and Sustainability. I'll be doing the presentation. Nick is here to help answer any questions if they come up, along with Chris Burton and Michael Brio from Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. So I can get this over to the right mode. Come on. There we go. All right. So Council Policy 5-1, otherwise known as the VMT policy, oversees the way that the city handles the transportation element for new land use development projects, right? So this is how we look at new projects and gives developers as well as the city the rules for how we process those. This version of the policy was passed, or the current version of the policy was passed back in February 2018, as John mentioned. And we were the 4th city in the state to pass this rule. Almost all cities have passed this rule now. And what it basically did is removed what was called level of service, or LOS, as the transportation metric for CEQA, and moved it to vehicle miles traveled as the basic big move. This aligned us with state policies and brought us into a kind of new way of looking at transportation that's really focused on multimodal types of projects and really understanding transportation's regional level impact, and really has focused, and it was intended to focus development into infill areas near transit. With the passage of the original version of this policy, we did have baked into that council direction to come back after all of our neighboring jurisdictions passed their versions of the rules, as well as we gained enough internal lessons to come back and see what we might do to improve its operation. So that's what we're here to do today. And a reminder, we did do a very short spot on this last month, and we're asked to come back with a deeper conversation around what we're proposing. So that's why we're here today. All right, so there's 3 different areas of proposal that we are bringing forward to council for discussion. The first category is market rate housing. The second one is around affordable housing. And the last one is really technical updates to the tools and maps that are used to implement this policy. So first, focusing on housing production. We'll go through each one of these a little bit deeper, but one, looking at streamlining more areas of the city for market rate housing. I'll touch on what streamlining means here in a second. Second one is allowing market rate housing access to the significant and unavoidable impacts portion of this policy if those projects are already aligned with the general plan. And the housing affordability, the affordable housing category, we're looking at streamlining a great deal more area in the city for affordable housing projects, and that updates some of the screening criteria as well. And then background updates. Basically, we're updating the very base map that we use for this, as well as moving over to the countywide calculator that we actually helped VTA build. All right, so what is streamlining, and what do we streamline for now? So streamlining is intended only for special projects that are either too small to really have a measurable impact, or to really carry any cost burden, or have de facto VMT reducing qualities, such as local serving retail. Every time you put a new Safeway in the city, folks are now driving less distance to the Safeways that were far away, right? And so that's one of the ways that we can justify a streamlined project. Streamlined project gets a very short report that says this project already meets the CEQA requirements of the city and does not need to go into a further CEQA study. And again, this is meant for special projects. We're going to be augmenting here these 2 ones that are in bold, one for market rate housing, the first one, and the second one is for affordable housing. How are we doing that? So for market rate housing, what we're doing is taking the current language and crossing out this with low VMT, or within the low VMT area portion of the clause. What this does is say transit supportive land use projects in planned growth areas, right? So urban villages, downtown, North San Jose, that are within the state's definition of high quality transit areas will get a faster pass. And you can see here, you gain a lot of the city, especially where in North San Jose, where we're hoping for a lot more housing growth after we retire the ADP that's out there right now. I see Councilmember Perales, your hand is up now. Should I take a clarifying question, or should we take that afterwards?
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm just getting in the queue.
All right, cool. Very good. All right. So that's one. Two is, let's see, I'm going to do it that way. Yeah. I'm going to just put out there real quick. The other thing with housing, market rate housing, is the change to allow market rate housing to use the override policy, or which would allow projects to get a statement of overriding considerations if they do have an unmitigable CEQA impact. And we have a lot of places where this is already allowed in the city, so this is not a new mechanism or anything like that. It's merely allowing more housing projects to get into that process. All right, for affordable housing, we're trying to solve some of the equity issues that are inherent in our land use setup and the history of land use in the city. And this policy 5-1 has kind of has the potential for exacerbating some of those inequities. This map here shows the basically that the low VMT areas are generally also what's considered lower resource areas, whereas the high VMT areas are generally what's called high resource areas, meaning they have high achieving schools, lots of resources, retail, things like that. What we want to do is allow more affordable housing into higher resource areas than before. So what we're doing is we're going to remove we're proposing to remove the clause that restricted affordable housing projects would need to be within planned growth areas to get streamlined treatment within the CEQA process. And you can see this changes the map for affordable housing from roughly 17% of the city to 65%. And sorry, that's not of the whole city of allowable residential lands. So yeah, we feel like this is a really big leg up for affordable projects. And the justification here is that what we see out of affordable projects, even when they're farther away from transit, that they produce a lot less vehicle miles traveled than general market rate housing. The last category here is the technical updates that are going on. These are things that staff can do on their own, but we want to make sure everybody's aware of what's happening. The first one is just the base map. Since BART has opened up in Milpitas and the like, is important to get some updates to the map. You can see, particularly in the North San Jose area, some pretty significant change in terms of the areas that are going to be able to move forward in an easier way through this policy. This is the per capita one, which means per person, and this would apply to residential projects. And here you can see the commercial one. This applies to office projects. And then the last update we're doing, the city, when it originally built its policy, we built along with it a online tool. So projects could look at what their VMT impact would be and start designing it from the front up. Developers have liked this tool a lot. It's given them a lot more information about what our processes are and the like. And VTA really liked what we did. And so they took our calculator and built a nicer online interface to it and expanded it to the whole county. And their project is pretty much done. We have some background technical things to finish, but soon the entire county will be using the same VMT calculator, which really helps with any kind of cross-boundary issues that might come up. So that's the presentation. Yeah, and then to acknowledge the memo from Councilmember Perales that there are some guidelines around how we might take on that item number 2 for allow all housing projects aligned with land use policies of the general plan to be considered for statements of significant unavoidable impacts. Thank you for your comments and guidance there. And we'll be taking guidance to go explore that and see if those kinds of considerations work to creating a holistic policy. With that, I'll take questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Perales, is it all right with you if we go to the public first?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go to the public first. Thank you.
Jill Borders.
Hi, thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for mentioning and changing the policy that has to do with the affordable housing and recognizing in our general plan that it is the, without you having to say it, just the equity piece of it, knowing that lower income people use transit more often, higher income people don't. Let's just say that out loud. And so from the beginning, people like me were just kind of trying to scream at any public meeting that anyone would listen. Like every time you decide to redevelop a lower income property, develop a high income property, you're losing all those transit riders, number one, that were taking it and they were displaced and they have nowhere to go. And the high rate market people are bringing their cars. And they're right by transit. So I just feel like I almost shed a tear. I'm not kidding, because it was an emotional response to being heard. And so thank you. That's all I want to actually say, just one point. So thank you.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for this item. I guess, some reminders that, very low income and extremely low income and mixed income ideas of housing can be really important. And mixed income just can offer an incredible flexibility and choices in how all income levels can live under one roof, can live in one neighborhood. And it can give you a variety of good choices for our future that I hope we're learning how to better talk about and understand. I'm a bit worried that you're trying to practice CEQA, really good practices with CEQA for affordable housing issues, yet you're giving this free pass to market rate housing. I understand the incentives involved, but why not invite market rate housing to the future of the environmental process? It looks kind of ugly to do it the way we are. I understand your incentive process, but I think we should do something that brings us all on board on the same course, and we all understand that. To make different rules for different groups, it creates confusion. And I know you're going to try to explain things, but there will undoubtedly be confusion, or inevitably will be confusion with these sort of practices. Why not line it up so we all can agree that, working towards a good environmental future is important to all of us? And it doesn't have to be, money does not have to be an issue. It really doesn't. We have to learn to work that way. It's the same with finding affordable housing. I mean, truly affordable housing. It's the same practice involved, same principle. And those are the incentives that can invite the future of why people want to develop here. And that's the good stuff. So good luck how you can work on this. Thank you.
Back to committee.
Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. And first off, staff, thank you for trying to mitigate this dilemma of the reduction of VMT, vehicle miles traveled, but also a goal of building in high resource areas. And as you pointed out, and as I think is no surprise, those two are in conflict throughout our city, at least. And so I wanted to see if you can point back to that slide or pull that slide back up and just kind of talk to me a little bit about how much the removal of that language, or I think it was one word, how much did that open up for some overlap of both of those goals?
Yeah, it's a really good point, right? And I think you're this is the map that matters, right? And so we're looking here at areas that overlap between high resource areas and low or high VMT. And the blue areas are kind of state denominated as the highest resource areas. White's kind of in between, yellow is a bit less. And you can really see areas overlap where you have lower VMT and higher resource areas. And so that's a lot of what we're gaining here right? The red areas are really what's important on this map, right? So if you go back here and you can see where that turquoise growth is happening, a lot of this West San Jose, Southwest San Jose, when you're coming along the 87 and 85 corridors, as well as sorry, wrong way there, a little bit out to the southeast, but not very much. So we're doing our best here where we're trying to open up more areas to consideration that see an overlap in lower VMT and high resource areas. And we're hoping we've struck the right balance here, because if we open the entire city, I think we're potentially just kind of going too far in a particular direction, and overriding the transportation interests of the city as well.
Well, and Ramses, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're in that green area as proposed, that means you got a streamlined pathway forward, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So
it doesn't mean affordable can't go into those other high resource areas. It means just it has to go through the more regular CEQA process.
Well said.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. And I think it's obviously just a unique dilemma there. I agree with both of those goals, and so I think we may expect to see some more projects getting proposed over in that western region, District 1 area, and since it meets both of our goals, I think we should keep that in mind, that it's not just about streamlining, but it's about let's help aid those projects to move through, because they can really help us achieve reduce VMT and all the benefits that brings, as well as developing in higher resource areas. So moving forward to my memo, I just wanted to say thank you to staff. I know we've been at this for a little bit now, and I really do feel, as I denoted in my memo, it's a bit of trying to thread a needle here. And so, I recognize the challenge of that, and that's not easy to do, because everything is conceptual, right? It's about, will we potentially have some projects proposed in areas in the future that may require a general plan amendment, and that, maybe they don't necessarily make sense to us today, but they may in the future. And can we create a pathway there where this policy is not so restrictive? Or the other side, do we create too large of a pathway where the floodgates have opened up, and now we've negated our own work here? So I've tried to propose, I think, some language that could help on that path, and didn't know if staff wanted to provide feedback on that, but I'd like to move that in acceptance with the report.
Michael.
Yeah, I just want to note that even though the policy currently does not support an override, there is always a path to an override. And there's actually a general plan amendment that we've received on a conversion of a school in District 10, which will be coming to you relatively soon for early consideration. And so as part of that process, as an example, we'll be asking the council and saying that this proposal is fundamentally inconsistent with the general plan and consistent with the transportation policy 5-1. We recommend denial. However, given that, do you want us to continue processing it? And council can direct us to continue processing it, directing the applicant that they have to go ahead and do an EIR if they so desire, and bring it back to council for its consideration. So as part of that process, there always is a path where council can consider a general plan amendment and ultimately approve it, even if it's inconsistent with the transportation policy. So I just want to make note of that. You're gonna be hearing about a GPA along these lines in the very near future.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, and I appreciate that. I think that what I'm trying to, the needle I'm trying to thread as well, is that one that removes it from, say, a strictly 100%. I'm sorry, there's some background noise. Thank you. One that removes it from, say, a strictly political decision, which in the case that you just described is what it would be, because there isn't a path besides the council overriding themselves and saying, no, we don't want to go this direction. What I'm trying to put forward is an opportunity where there is a path, right? But it has some very, very strict parameters and some benefits that the council needs to be looking at. And so it just kind of, makes it a little bit more clear and a little less political, to where, there is again, a very narrow path that somebody can navigate down, and the council can vet out, versus just, sorry, you would be recommended denial unless, the council, which at the moment, right, arbitrarily would decide for whatever reason, you should move forward. And so I just think that's the hope that I'm going for. And so I didn't know if staff, if you wanted to, sounded like you may be thinking, hey, the suggested language that I have is not necessary. So I wanted to see if is that the case, or what is it, if I'm moving this language, what does that look like for staff on your receptiveness of being able to take that and craft something out of it?
Yeah, no, I think, thank you. That explanation helps a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, we're definitely willing to explore it. I think there's a question about what that criteria would be, for example. I mean, I think I already have thoughts whizzing around in my brain. But I mean, we can definitely explore it and present some kind of alternative or some approach that council could consider. I think I think the idea, just sort of your comment about, taking it out of the political realm where the council just overrides it, but giving more sort of clarity on, from a policy perspective, if it were to have a path forward, what a project would need to do or accomplish to meet city goals, was helpful. So yeah, I mean, we're willing to take a look at that, explore that.
Thank you. Yeah, and obviously it still would require that council overriding vote. I just think that it just puts a little bit more clarity and parameters around, why would we even consider something like this, right? Because it needs an overriding consideration, and very, very high level, right, of and a high bar, right, to meet. But that's what it would require, versus, can you successfully lobby 6 council members well enough to override a direction? So that's kind of what we're hoping. That's what I'm hoping for. So I'll make a motion then to accept the staff report and include my the direction of my memo, and in conversation with the chair. I'm comfortable with this coming back to committee first.
Second.
Can we make a comment about the return to T&E, where we have a lot of work done on this, and there's a lot of projects that are waiting for some changes to this policy to be done. And returning back to T&E does add a lot of time to processes. So we're wondering.
I'm comfortable with it going straight to council. But I do know that we had an interest from our chair that it come back to T&E, and so I was comfortable with that as well. If you wanted to try to convince our chair as to why, I'll let that argument play out.
Ramses, I would, if I'll weigh in as deputy city manager on this one, I would let the council make its direction to us on that, because we can move forward with what we need to move forward with, and if we need to, we've got a pretty complicated piece of policy here that we need to make sure is fitting, and if they would like to bring it back to T&E, I believe that's completely within their discretion to do. So I would prefer we let this decision to the committee elected officials.
Of course.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Perales, for bringing it back to the committee. I think, we make a lot of legislation on the dais, and it's really the role of the committees to do the markups of these policies and to really do the deep thinking. That is our role, and that's why we specialize in these specific committees and don't all serve on each thing and do everything as a committee of the whole. And that's why I think it's important for us to get this right, so that we have fully vetted this very important policy and ensure that we've done everything that we have asked staff to do and to review, and that we're sending the best thing forward to the full council for the final review and approval. Councilmember Foley. Michael, sorry, Councilmember Foley, I saw Michael Brio's hand go up. Did you want to address that specific point, Michael?
No, I'm sorry, I'm lowering my hand. Yeah, I will mention that. Well, since I had my hand up unexpectedly, I mean, Yigby's sort of wanting to move forward and contingent upon these changes. But so there are, just be aware that there are things that are trying to move forward that need this to kind of land to a finish line. I just wanted to note that.
Well, the mayor has asked in the March budget message for Yigby to go forward as a pilot, so I don't think that is absolutely necessary for this particular case. Councilmember Foley.
Thank you, Chair. I would support this coming back to T&E because, as you mentioned, many times we make changes at the dais that we haven't all considered what the implications of those changes would be. So I'd rather do the markup in this committee and then have it come back to the council after we've concluded our best effort to make it the perfect ordinance or perfect policy that we possibly can. I do have one question for you though, Ramses, is with regards to the changes that you're proposing, loosening guidelines to develop affordable housing in the high resourced areas, does that have any negative effect on open space in other parts of the city? Do you see that reducing open space possibilities or having the unintended consequences of that?
Yeah, I mean, in a direct fashion, no. It only allows for things which are already allowed, right? So it's not changing zoning or changing requirements in any other way. So if an affordable housing project can move forward already today per general plan guidelines and zoning, it can go ahead and just gets an extra support for that. It doesn't contemplate any changes to how land use designations might change or anything like that.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. It just makes it easier for other projects to go forward effectively. Great. Okay. Thank you. That's the only question I had.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from my colleagues? All right, I think we can take the map down. And I also think we're ready for the vote.
Esparza? Perales?
Yes.
Foley?
Aye.
Cohen?
Aye.
Davis?
Yes. All right, the motion passes. Thank you all. And we will move on to open forum.
Okay, sure. I guess I would say for being an expert, I think you really love that.
Blair
Beekman. Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you everyone for your work on the previous item. It's my feeling that we can address economic issues of housing for long-term needs. It doesn't have to necessarily involve so much the ideas of money. And you're thinking about ideals at this time. Thank you very much in continuing these efforts. To go on, in what has been years of dialogue and negotiation for all sides about the future of the Ukraine area, including recent additions that the Ukraine can join the EU and that Russia can actually return parts of Georgia, the Georgia Republic, I hope we do not have to continue to rely on war, its harm, and its displacement as the ways for countries in the Ukraine area to try to prove their mettle and their points of view. Thanks for letting me say that. To speak also, we're talking, there was an item at, I think, Rules and Open Government last week that was really interesting about the future of housing for, say, drug treatment programs, how to consider the use of drug use in our future. What do we do with those conditions? Coming from the state level, we're introducing some kind of tough new measures. We possibly are going to be expanding Laura's Law, that we talked about not expanding. There's a series of things coming in, and the incidents that happened with Paul Soto a few months ago, I think we all have to kind of take a breath and consider what we are actually starting to do at this time and kind of reassess that people can fall through these cracks with these latest steps, that we do want to really address issues, but people will fall through the cracks in these efforts. And we got to be really on top of Laura Law's issues and really have the review studies each 6 months, exactly at 6 months, and do things really well and review ourselves really well as we're going along these new steps. Thank you.
Back to committee.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.